continuously chant, then your life is guaranteed to be successful. Not only this life, but you will achieve the true goal of all life. Krishna, you can achieve what to speak of liberation, divine love, relationship with Krishna, the Supreme Personality, the all-attractive reservoir of pleasure. So therefore, this story shows near-death experience, so the idea of the soul, the gross body, the subtle body, everything's in the Bhagavatam. The gross body, the subtle body, the soul itself, and the power of chanting the holy names. So there was a Brahmin who had a nice wife, family. She was very beautiful, a good situation. Showing again the power of the modes of nature and letting the senses go to the object of the senses without regulating it. When he was in the forest one day, he saw a merchant with a prostitute engaged in an amorous exchange. And when he came back home, he could not get this kind of thought out of his head, his image. And because he could not restrain himself, he ended up hiring that maidservant. He was very wealthy with inheritance from his father. But he ended up hiring her as his maidservant. I can imagine what his Brahmini wife thought. Right, your maidservant. Cue the eye roll, right? But she was very humble. She did not say anything. And he engaged her like this for some time. Began to spend all his money, giving her ornaments, jewelry, things to please her. Finally, he completely rejected his Dharma Patni, his wedded wife, who was also very nice. But the idea of, prostitution, it's like tamasic gratification. Sense gratification, but in a lower, mode of ignorance. Krishna says, I am calm or lust properly engaged in marriage for the upraising of God-conscious children. But he was not satisfied with that, sex life through dharma. So he thought, let me enjoy that through prostitution. And because of engaging in the mode of ignorance through that, his whole life began to fall apart and fall into that degradation. Because he was not satisfied with a simple life, not like a life of poverty, but a normal life, then he started spending all of his inheritance in jewelry and so many elaborate, opulent things to keep the prostitute happy. He had many children with her. And then he began to engage in dacoitry. He would thieve, he would steal, he would plunder, he would murder even, he would cheat in gambling. So that, you see, the addiction to tamagun engaged him in all these other kind of tamasic things that ultimately started to destroy his life. And also ultimately as the result of that, when he began to get old, what happens in old age? In young age, he thought, I will marry this beautiful prostitute lady. And he was with her and he rejected his original wife. But in old age, we are all forced to remarry. We are all forced to remarry Jada. Jada is in the Bhagavatam. There's a beautiful story, we'll tell it another time. She is the daughter of time. And she is old age. And we are all forced to marry her, whether man or woman. And what happens when we marry old age? She brings all of her friends and family, all of her in-laws, sickness, disease, arthritis, pain, all of her friends and in-laws. Oh, come. So this Brahmin's name was Ajamil. And when he married old age, then eventually it led to his time of death. But there was one auspicious thing in his life, even though his whole life was full of sin. He had one son with his prostitute, who he named Narayan. Narayana. When he was in household life with the prostitute, at one point a sadhu came to his door and he had just a little bit of a good samskar left, a good idea of, oh, at least I should honor the sadhu. And so he gave him some alms, and he had just had a son. And so he asked the sadhu, what should I name my son? And the sadhu said, the sadhu knows. He was a good person. That's why we should understand that the soul is not good or bad, meaning the soul is actually good. It's Krishna's potency, part and parcel with Krishna, with God. So it's pure, it's good. Ajo nitya sasvato, it's ever youthful. It's eternal, it's primeval. It's part and parcel of God. So even if the soul is like a person, is a murderer, the soul is still pure. Krishna says, the soul is neither the slayer nor the slain. So the sadhu saw the heart of this person, the soul of this person, and thought, let me help him. That's why sadhus can be merciful and compassionate, because they don't see this person is good or bad according to what they have done in this life. That is just the action of the modes of nature, karma and the gunas. And the soul is just on this ride. Sometimes when you're on a ride, you go through like a house of horrors. The soul is on this ride. And the sadhu sees the soul, and that moment's association with the sadhu gives us a chance to get off the ride of material existence and samsara and get on the transcendental ride of Krishna's pastimes, where we'll be ever blissful. Therefore, he met the sadhu, and the sadhu seeing, oh, he's a good person, but he has become covered over by deep ignorance. The tamagun, or the mode of ignorance, is what is acting. And he is merely on that ride. He made a choice. It's like you do get a choice. But you take one small bad decision and it can lead to another one, to another one, to another one. And then ultimately, this is where he ended up. So the sadhu said, name him Narayan. He knew he would be very attached to him. So this Ajamil was so attached to his son Narayan that he would constantly call out to him. It said that actually Narayan he would walk a little funny and speak a little like garbled words. He was just learning. So he was very cute, and his father was always thinking of him and calling out to him. When he was eating, he would say, you should eat with me. He would always be thinking where he is. So one day when he was very old, he was coughing, he was feeling very sick, he saw 3 fierce personalities approach. This was this first out-of-body experience. Nothing like he had seen before. One was holding a rope. One was holding a hook. A noose, a hook, and I think it's a chain or some kind of, I'll find it and we'll recap. They approached him, these demonic figures, very fearsome figures. They are the messengers of death, Yamaduta. And if in your life you perform pious activities, religious activities, you are spiritual, you worship, you help others, you're a good person, then at the time of death, the messengers of God, or the angels, come and they take you to the higher plane. And if you are always engaged in sinful activities, harming others, at the time of death, Yamaraja's messengers, the Yamadutas, come. So they came, and what do they do first? They pull out the soul with the subtle body and they tie it up. They put the noose around the subtle body and they begin to drag you out of the body by force. So as he was being dragged out of his material body, his gross body, in his subtle body, because he's not just taking the soul, they're ripping it out the subtle body by force, tying it up, and then dragging you towards hell. So as he was just as he was being approached in fear and in also desire to be with his son for one few moments more, he began to call out, Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. And as he was chanting that, at the same time he was being dragged towards hell out of his body. Who appeared? The Vishnu Dutas. Vishnu Dutas are the messengers of Vishnu, Krishna, who can take one to the higher planets, the Vaikuntha Dham, the eternal abode of the Lord. Upon achieving that, one will not have to come down into suffering and karma. One will get liberation from the bondage of karma. Karma bandham prahasyasi. Neha vikramo nasasti pratyavayo navidite. Swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato vayat. Little performance of this dharma will free you from the greatest fear. Karma bandhan prahasyasi. It will liberate you from the bondage of karma. So the Vishnudutas came and said, "Stop! Where are you taking him? You don't have no right. He is under our jurisdiction now." The Yamadutas, immediately they're also outnumbered. 4 Vishnudutas, 3 Yamadutas. 3 Yamadutas are for the sins we have performed by body, mind, and speech. 4 Vishnudutas are what? The 4 syllables of the name Narayana. They appeared to protect and to save Ajamil. So right now, he's not completely left his body. That's why it's a near-death experience. He is in his subtle body, but still attached. And in this moment, in this kind of subtle middle realm, he is able to witness a dialogue between the Yamadutas and the Vishnudutas.